And as you would expect, a lot has certainly happened in this week. And early in the week, a petition to kick out Chief Justice David Maraga emerged before the Speaker of the National Assembly dismissed it as a long-shot pedestrian petition seeking to misuse the House. Still, this week, a debate on Kenya's debt crisis raged, drawing mixed reactions after IMF raised a red flag. And businessman Jimmy Wanjigi was also on the news, with police issuing summons in a commando gun drama style. And hours ago, the raging axe of election petitions fell on Nandi Hill Alfred Keter, who now reads politics in the ruling. Welcome to a week in review, and I'll introduce the panel that we have this morning, and I'll start with Dr. Linda Musumba, who is an advocate. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
We also have Midhamo Mushiri, who is a former Senate aspirant, Nairobi County.
Good
morning.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Javas Bigambo, who is well-versed with matters governance.
Thank you so much.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us. And one of the stories that has been missed out there that I want us to start with is, and this is basically just to get your feelings and reactions, is to do with KNH, Kenyatta National Hospital, where we saw brain surgery performed on the wrong person, which, I mean, by all means and standards is one of those things that should never even happen. Javas, let's start with you on your, I'm not sure whether it's your thoughts I want, but maybe your comments.
Look, I'll tell you this, that it is first very unfortunate, ridiculous, pedestrian, that such a thing could happen at a respected national referral facility, which actually is depended upon even in the region. And various professional, ethical, and standard issues arise. One, that by issuing just a statement through the CEO yesterday, it tells you that even the CEO herself has not brought herself to the consciousness of matters accountability by that sadistic happening. To the extent that even a theater could be organized for the operation, surgical operation, that even the procedure of going through the files could not be adhered to by the doctors, by the anesthetists, etc., by even trying to find out, for instance, whether the next of kin or the next of kin of the patient had signed off to authorize this kind of surgical operation, and also tells you that maybe record keeping is also at issue at Kenyatta National Hospital. It also brings to question matters accountability at our public facilities. Now, after the other happening where a child was stolen at that hospital, and then this, even for the CEO and the entire management to look at the press and the nation in the face and say that it's an unfortunate happening that happened without even them resigning. And I would even expect that by today, the Health Committee of the National Assembly should actually be up in arms against that and find a way to bring sanity, proper management, and accountability at that national facility.
All right, Dr. Musumba, from a legal perspective, what options does one have when something like this happens? Because this is a case, I'm sure that there are others that may have happened, and it may not be as drastic or as bad as this, but negligence being the underscore here. What avenues can one, take up?
Clearly, the patient concerned should really be seeing a lawyer as soon as possible. I did read on Twitter last night that he was recovering well. I don't know what recovering well means when you actually did not have a medical problem that required that operation. So this individual really should see a lawyer about this. Of course, it's always been said that it's really difficult to be able to pin down medical personnel when it comes to negligence. However, this is one case where the hospital authorities have already suspended the persons concerned, which of course is, I would say, a tacit admission of liability. And therefore, I think it really should be possible for this individual to be able to recover some, some damages from it. But I do want to add that as someone who, my mother worked at Kenyatta Hospital from the time she left medical training school all the way till she retired, it surprises me the sort of things that are happening at the hospital today, because we went to school because of that hospital.
Right.
And today when I look and see what is happening, I find it unfortunate because it gives a bad name to an institution that trains this country's doctors, because it's a teaching and referral hospital. it gives a bad name to all the people who do an honest job of being able to produce the best. So that this kind of management gaffes, of course, which have become very frequent in the last few months and weeks, in my view, just demoralizes, I think, the majority of people who do want to do a good job at the institution.
All right, Mr. Midamo, your thoughts on what action possibly would be taken, when there is such gross negligence?
Mike, thank you for this invitation. I think, Mike, there is nothing to defend here. There's nothing to defend on this KNH saga. It is unfortunate. It is very sad. And I think what we should start seeing this morning is heads rolling. We want to see some sacking in that hospital. We want to see some actions taken, because over the past few days, we have seen some rote, some deliberate, some blatant negligence, professional negligence by some doctors, some leaders that we expected to take care of our health sector.
But interestingly enough, there's gross negligence there, and as a politician, you're very quick to say that there should be heads rolling, but we don't see the same reflected with our leaders when there is gross negligence or incompetence, really, because it would come under incompetence as well.
I do not want to cast blames on the CEO of the hospital, because I know...
but where does the buck stop?
The buck stops there. But you see, we have got the board of directors. We have got board of directors, men who just sit and does nothing. They do nothing. So I think what we should have now is a total overhaul of the entire leadership of that hospital. Then the Minister for Health, Madam Cecily Kariuki, should now constitute a new board with a new CEO. And she should, again, tell us what the problem has been. If it is the financing, then they should do some more funding for that hospital. Because what you get in that hospital today, because I've been there in several occasions, you find that it's in most occasions there are no doctors, no medicines, tests. You are sent somewhere in, is it German something, testing something facility. I don't know why a referral hospital, a national referral hospital, a patient can be sent outside the hospital for a test to procure some medicine. I think something must be done on this hospital. It's a matter of urgency.
Okay. All right. Javas, your thoughts on possibly there needs to be a change of management. And I want us to widen the scope, because this is Kenyatta National Hospital, and I'm sure for one reason or the other, they have been on the headlines for the wrong reasons in the last few months.
And it's not just a question of Kenyatta National Hospital alone. We need to look at all the referral facilities and hospitals in this country. The other thing is that the professional body, the Kenya Medical Practitioners or Doctors and Dentists Board, should now actually step up and ask itself what is the issue with a number of its professionals. Because the happenings at KNH is not the first and the last to happen there. There are lots of issues that have been raised against various doctors to do with negligence, etc., brought before that board. A number of times it has been seen as though the board is defending its members. And the other thing is, I think it is also proper for Kenyans to start demanding the best out of public facilities. The exchequer expends so much to just finance or foot matters health in this country. We need not have a situation where individuals who are supposed to be custodians of good health of men and women in this country are in fact themselves engineers of ill health. The other thing is that if we are talking about heightening the scales of accountability, responsibility, leadership, etc., it is important that as of today, beyond the calls for, say, resignation of the management and the leadership of KNH, we need to have the CEO brought to book. We need to have the doctor and the entire team, beyond just them, say, being suspended or taken off duty, being brought to book and serious charges pressed against them. The kind of anguish, dilemma, pain visited upon the family of such individual who was operated on yesterday should actually rise and teach a fundamental lesson to such individuals and be actually a teaching aid for all persons who may have issues or cases of professional negligence against them.
All right, Dr. Musumba, I want us to take a break, but before we take that break, just your thoughts on how accountability and how we handle cases like this in terms of, shouldn't we have the CEO or wherever the buck stops coming out and saying, you know what, if an institution which I am in charge of has done something like this, then I really do not deserve to be the leader at this point in time.
Definitely, there are two levels of accountability here. There's personal accountability, and then there's the accountability of the, of the authority that, sits over this individual. So my colleague here has talked about the board of directors. The board of directors should have taken an action immediately to suspend the CEO, together with her management team, to pave way for investigations into this. Because, of course, despite the outrage that we feel, the CEO still has to be accorded an opportunity to be able to be heard. Of course, that I think is, that's a given. But secondly, there's also the level of personal accountability where, as a CEO, something like this happens under your watch. And as much as you'd like to say that you sit in an office where you cannot be in each and every room, monitoring each and everything that happens, but it's down to you to create a system that enables all the little nuts and bolts in the institution to work, and to set in place a monitoring framework that enables you on a daily basis to know how many needles there are, how many have been used, how many have been disposed. So at a personal level, you need to be able to take stock and say, I failed to put in place a system that enables me to be able to manage this institution. I've caused heartache and anguish, to a certain family. The question still remains, what has happened to the patient who actually needed the brain surgery?
Right. Is
there going to be a repeat? There are so many questions to be asked. I think if you're a person of honor, you should fall on your sword and basically, I'll not say the end of it, but you should just fall on your sword. Yeah, but I think
when you fall on your sword, we know what happens after that. And of course, the other questions that are raised out of this is the fact that this is what we know. How many people have been given medicines that possibly are not theirs, that would affect them? And maybe the effects may not be as drastic or as bad as this particular case, but of course, negligence remains negligence. And how many lives possibly have even been lost because of this negligence? But that's, well, a week in review. And for now, we want to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be looking at other stories that are making headlines this week. Do stay with us right here on KTN News.
This is KTN News.
changing the way you think.
Kenya is not a large producer of rice in the African continent.
Changing the way you see. Changing the way you perform.
Good afternoon, I'm here at Manchester City.
It's 2 hours more to go before we get to Mombasa.
Business Today. You'll never look at business the same.
This is KTN News.
All right, welcome back to Morning Express. We are reviewing the week that has been, and just a quick reintroduction of who we have in studio. We have Dr. Linda Musumba, Javas Bigambo, and Midhamo Mushiri, basically just reviewing what has transpired this week. Now, one of the other things that we saw happen this week was a lawyer who went to court and was, seeking to have the Chief Justice, his deputy, basically removed from office by way of what he termed as, incompetence. Javas, your thoughts on that direction and the fact that it seems like, in terms of democracy, the democratic space opening, any Kenyan is allowed to go and, challenge whoever in court using the right channel.
Well, by way of Article 3, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, any Kenyan has the duty and the right to defend this Constitution and thus protect it. But I will tell you this, by way of the quotidian happenings on the legal or even political, scale, in this country, it confirms to me my worst fear that actually Kenya continues to demonstrate that the field of madness is very broad. How can, for instance, such an individual create time to write such a petition that when you look at it has got very many legal features? One, for instance, and I do not have to laud the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Muturi, for dismissing the petition, because any cursory look at that petition itself would bring one to an appreciation that it did not factor in various fundamental issues. Now, when an individual just rises and wants to have all members of the JSC expelled from the positions they hold, including the Chief Justice, and yet the Constitution is very clear on mechanisms of having the Chief Justice removed from office. Beyond that, one knows very well that you need to bring critical charges against each member. You need to label this blanket condemnation and blanket pursuit of the removal of the entire JSC, 7 JSC members, was ridiculous and in fact should be condemned in the strongest terms. And that's why, for instance, even pursuant to the standing orders the Speaker cited of the National Assembly, whether it is standing order number 223 or even 230, basically even the National Assembly itself, upon petition, as is provided for in law, does not have the power, in fact, even to remove the Chief Justice from the office.
All right, Midhamo, do you suspect that there is a political hand in this because there's a legal side of it, but there's also those who feel that there could be some politics behind it?
I think there is no politics behind it. I think the drafter of that constitution, the drafter of that bill, of that petition, the petitioner himself, and I wrote it somewhere that all he wanted was to make news, maybe to appear on the newspaper, publicity. Because
he seems to have done that.
Yes, my friend here has just said that every Kenyan has got the right to seek justice. But again, my reading of Article 251 of the Constitution tells me that, yes, you can petition Parliament. The Parliament can investigate a judicial officer, that may be the judge, member of the Judicial Service Commission. But you have to outline the reasons. If there's gross misconduct, you have got to outline it. Now, this guy, what he did, he picked some names. He wanted them impeached with zero reasons that he had enumerated on that petition. So I think he just wanted to make some news. Speaker Muturi was right. to dismiss that petition in its entirety. It was a petition that didn't have to even to be held for 2 days within the office of the Speaker of the National Assembly. So I think what we have here is that if we seek to sack Justice Maraga, we must follow the Constitution. We know that the only person who can sack Justice Maraga is the Judicial Service Commission, where he is president. Right? So
there's a procedure for that.
There is a procedure for that outright in the Constitution. So I think the guy who petitioned Parliament to have these members of the Judicial Service Commission sacked only wanted to make some news.
All right. Dr. Musumba, your thoughts on that? And there are those who feel that the corridors of justice are under attack from whatever quarters.
My own view on this particular issue is, number one, may I celebrate the fact that an individual, a Kenyan, can be able to, if they feel aggrieved, be able to bring a matter such as this, a weighty matter such as trying to unseat, almost more than 3/4 of the Judicial Service Commission to an institution to be able to get, the relief that they seek. Why I say this is because we've come from a historical era where there were very many things that happened. We had strong government and we had institutions, of course, that, were very, very, anti the people, and there was no recourse for this. So the fact that this individual is able to draft a petition or such a weighty petition and be able to present it before an institution, for me, is something that I celebrate, that we now can be able to do that. Then the next level, of course, then goes towards the fact, which is what my colleagues are talking about, the petition that was, then we must go into the petition and look at it and then ask the question, was it brought properly before the Speaker of Parliament? The matters raised within the petition, are they matters that Parliament can deal with or not deal with? Then, if there are matters that Parliament can deal with, do they have merit or not? The quality of the drafting and all those questions, yeah? And obviously, clearly, the Speaker must have, in his wisdom, looked at this and realized that this petition, on this occasion, did not merit being, But for me, I still say that there's coming a day, perhaps somewhere down the line, where it will be very, very important that, an individual does bring a petition of this nature, depending on who is in office and depending on what they are doing. So for me, I would say that it's a test to our institutions to see whether, our parliamentary institution is able to sieve and see what, merits to go forward or not. It's also a test to the fact that, an ordinary individual can be able to bring a petition of that nature and be listened to and be heard. I think that speaks a lot for the kind of freedoms that have been fought for a lot in this country.
Midamo, you want to add on to something?
You see, Mike, the government is made up of 3 arms: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. We have got tenets, doctrines of separation of powers, well protected in this Constitution. It is therefore sound ridiculous when we see someone seeking to have a petition, asking Parliament, asking one arm to sack the other arm. Yeah? And that's why I felt that this individual, what he ought to have done is to register his predicaments, is to register his issues with the Judicial Service Commission. You do not petition Parliament to sack the judiciary. You don't petition judiciary to sack Parliament. That can never happen in the current constitutional dispensation that we have today.
Okay, and I guess he was, like Dr. Musumba says, within his right to exercise his constitutional right and try. However, maybe the merit and the threshold was not high enough, or did not have anything that, was to be considered.
The petition was not admissible in the first place.
All right, and I want us to also look at accountability. And one of the other issues that was raised as we were carrying on over the week was the issue of national debt. But we had the leader of majority, Adan Duale, coming out to say that Kenya, basically, we've not reached a point where it is desperate. But Javas, your thoughts, first of all, on the fact that IMF have come out and said, and raised a red flag, saying if you continue with this insatiable appetite for debt, then it may reach a point where it's not sustainable. And the issue may not even be debt only, but when it comes to accountability, is what are we doing with the money that we borrow?
One, there is the question of collateralization of debt at the national level. Two, there is the question of trying to imagine that by borrowing so much and channeling, purportedly so, to matters development, that having such kind of debt is well-meaning and does good for our present and our future. Far from the truth. Let's face it. While all these are critical issues of national importance, one wonders, for instance, why is it that there has been a problem on questions of accountability with the first Eurobond issue? How come the Auditor General is still up in arms about the expending of the colossal amounts of the first Eurobond? The other thing is this. If you're to do a comparative look at how successive governments have been borrowing from our foreign partners, then you realize that this present government has really borrowed a lot. How come then a very important Bretton Woods institution, the IMF, has raised a red flag over the same, but we who are borrowing are very comfortable with that, yet the person lending tells you that, hey, be careful about the manner in which you are extensively borrowing. The other thing is this. If at all we do not have internal mechanisms of matters accountability, expenditure, and still all this debt rests on the shoulders of Kenyans, it is a question that we must not actually be we must not be lenient about. Kenyans have a right and a duty to ask these fundamental questions. The president too, and the entire executive, including the treasury, must not sit on their laurels when the IMF and citizens are raising concerns about all these issues of national debt. Honorable Duale, yes, and with all due respect, should not tell us, and tell the nation rather, that as we are borrowing, until we come to the red line, we must not actually be alarmed or up in arms. It is important for us to keep our debts very low. Yes, there's a question of the debt ceiling, etc. Yes, there could be an argument that every nation on this earth, including the powerful United States of America, has got a debt. But if it does not concern us, just as it must concern any private citizen or any individual, when they keep on borrowing, it tells you that they're living beyond their means. It's important that we as a nation engage in matters development within our means.
All right, Midhamo, your thoughts on the debt crisis that we have right now? Crisis, according to some, according to others, it's not really a crisis.
Mike, I think I'm of a different opinion from my colleague here. I think nobody loves debts. Nobody would be very happy to have a lot of debts. We have got the United States of America that is struggling to pay up a minimum of $20 trillion.
That doesn't make it right, though.
That is true. But you see, Mike, we have got Thika Road here. This road was built in 2009, 2008, 2007. We borrowed that money. The question should be, do we need that road? Did we need that, that road? The SGR here, the railway, has been built on debt, money borrowed. Do we need that SGR? Other facilities that are upset. You see, the other projects that we have in this country.
So are you saying that the debts we have taken so far have been needed and possibly we even need to take more?
That is it. Because do we need these projects? Did we have money to finance these projects prior to our borrowing? Did we have sufficient funding? We didn't have money. We had to borrow. The question is, do we need Thika Road? Do we need the SGR? Do we need RAPSET and a few other projects? Do we need an expanded airport? That should be the question. That should be the question on this debt narrative. I do not think it is good to condemn the borrowing in its entirety, in total.
Despite the fact that red flags are being raised that if we continue, then it's not sustainable. And as we still ask the question whether they are necessary, the question also would be on priority and the fact that to the common mwananchi, at the end of the day, what matters to me is when I walk into that supermarket, can I afford the price of unga?
Very true, Mike. we have been told by the world news agencies that the other day we borrowed 200 billion through Eurobond. It was oversubscribed 7 times. So do we qualify for more borrowing? Are we creditworthy? The answer is yes. So I think what we should be asking ourselves here is about the accountability, about the spending of this borrowed money. If it is, if it is used properly, then I do not see anything wrong with it.
All right, Dr. Musumba, your thoughts on the debt crisis that we have?
I think
where we are headed.
Yeah, for me, what I would say is a national debt crisis, when you break it down, is to say that you and me, the taxpayer, including those who are coming after us for generations, to come, everybody owes some money because that money is paid through our taxes. And therefore, as taxpayers, the question would be: have you been given a rationale for why more money should be borrowed, and for how past money is borrowed? What is the plan to be able to get out of this? I'm just reminded of Singapore, which I think we read in the press last week, declared a dividend for citizens above 21 years. One has to, to ask the question, what sort of measures have they taken to be able to arrive at a place where they're able to declare a national dividend?
Literally,
as opposed to yes, yeah. So I think for me it is rationalization. Do I understand as a taxpayer how and where I come in responding to the national debt crisis, as some may say and others may say it's a boon? I just think it's being able to have that understanding of why, if we need to borrow more, if we need to cut back. I think for me it's the understanding.
All right, and Javas, this brings us now to the point of accountability, because one of the problems we may have, and maybe Mheshimiwa puts it right, that debt may not be a bad thing per se. The question is accountability. And secondly, those who are charged with gatekeeping, that money is spent the way it's supposed to be spent, have not accounted to the stakeholders.
Well, it is very important that issues of debt and debt management and financing of our projects should be crystal clear. For instance, when we are borrowing all this money from our foreign partners, do we have earmarked projects where specific amounts are going to? That's a critical question. Second, if at all a particular project has been earmarked for financing through a certain date, amount from the debt borrowed, upon implementation of that project, are we able to tell how much money went there, how it has been expended? Now, that's the question of accountability to the people upon whom this amount has been borrowed. As long as the question of specific amounts to specific projects being financed is not clear, as long as the people, the citizens, are not explained to at the closure of that project, then the citizens remain in the dark. Why is it that government should not come out clean or rather open on how much has been expended on various projects? There are things, for example, a very important constitutional office, an independent office of the Auditor General, raises queries on, for example, Eurobond. It tells you that questions of accountability, questions of clarity on expenditure of public finances is at issue. Now, any person, as he said, cannot be at ease with debt. But when you keep on borrowing so that you can sustain yourself, then that is a red flag.
All right, and I want us to conclude on that and go to something else.
You see, Mike, just I was saying before, today we have dozens of dams being dug using borrowed money. About 20 billion being used in Kirinyaga, dozens of billions being used in Kericho, and in other regions in this country. What should be the question is, do we need these dams? Our country is dry. We have witnessed people die of hunger.
I think on the point of accountability, we may need those dams, but the question is, do they even cost
But
that
again,
much?
my friend has raised a very pertinent question here about the accountability, about the Attorney General, rather the Auditor General, how he doubted the expenditure of this money. That is it. He said, the Auditor General...
He did not doubt.
What did he say?
Look, he should read the Auditor General's report.
That is it. But you see, my reading of that report notes that the Auditor General was, to some extent, trying to play some politics in it. He said that he does not know how this money was spent.
Yes, and as an Auditor General, if he does not know, then we should be worried because he should be the one with the books.
But there is an Auditor General who knows very well that this country has got a budget of 2.2 trillion. We have collected this much money. We are borrowing 253 billion. So this money has come to complement. Rather, to fill in the budget.
Isn't the Auditor General the gatekeeper who's there to literally look at the accounts and say, yes, I'm satisfied with the way the money has been spent, it is here. But if he has any queries that are raised, he does that on our behalf.
He said he doesn't see a project, a single project that was built on the borrowed money. Yeah? As if ourselves we expected to see a project built on the Eurobond money. We didn't expect that. We expected the money borrowed to fill in the gaps in the budget. Then we can implement the budget. So what we expect this year, even this year, we have borrowed 200 billion. This 200 billion should fill in the budget, the 2017-2018 financial year, so that at least we can get
But honestly, isn't that antithetical to logic? Because to audit means to verify. To verify means to look into and also substantiate, which means it is evidence-based.
Correct.
So as long as that does not happen, then it befits even the very purpose of doing the audit itself. So when the gentleman to my right indicates that as if, quote him, we expected to see these projects and the money going to these projects, hey, how ridiculous that can sound.
Now, there's my point, Mike. You have a budget of 20 shillings, you haven't got 15 shillings with you. So what you do is you borrow 5 shillings. Once you borrow 5 shillings, meaning you have 20 shillings. At the end of the day, how do you authenticate, how do you substantiate that this 5 shillings was used to build this particular project? It is impossible. So,
but you should be able to substantiate that the 20 went into that project.
That is the point.
Yes, the 20
that is the point.
But I think we'll end up with splitting hairs on that, on the Auditor's General report, which we don't have on the desk right now, but I'm sure that's something that we can look at. I also want us to, just to get your comments on the bill, the proposed bill by William Kamket, the Member of Parliament for Tiati, and this is to have a powerful Prime Minister remove the office of Deputy President. Let me start with you, Dr. Musumba, on whether we have, first of all, used every avenue within the Constitution that we have, the setup that we have right now, before we begin changing the Constitution.
Gitonga, what I would say is, I think for a long time, people have resisted to change the Constitution since 2010, obviously, again, because of historical reasons, where we saw the Constitution being changed willy-nilly, in the past. However, I think it has become very obvious, as we've gone along from 2010, that this Constitution does need some amendment. And this is because there's some inherent faults that are within this Constitution that really must be amended. So the whole conversation about the MP's bill, I think, in my view, is a healthy conversation. For me, the safeguard, which I appreciate very much, is the fact that those kinds of changes have to go to a referendum. And therefore, that means that the MP, together with the supporters or the sponsors, or if this bill is actually taken up, means they have to go to the public and be able to ask the public whether you agree with my proposals or whether you don't. And the public is then therefore going to take a vote on those particular issues. I would say that there are other issues that also need changing, and I would say that if at all is going to, to catch enough steam to actually go to a referendum, then all issues should be amalgamated and resolved all at once. Yeah. But one thing that I also appreciate, of course, from the MP's presentation yesterday of the bill was the crunching of the numbers, because before you actually take an action, you need to crunch the numbers and see, are we really saving money?
Yeah, count the cost.
Are we really saving money? And this is, of course, something that needs to bring a multidisciplinary, sort of engagement where you have people crunching those numbers, where you also have social scientists being able to say, if we reduce the number of women in Parliament, are we gaining? Are we gaining, at a social level, or are we actually clawing back on things that have happened. So I would really urge for a very scientific approach on this so that we are actually able to know for a fact that we will be saving money and that from social scientists and political scientists, we are not going to actually be causing the society to collapse and clawing back on gains that we already have made. From lawyers, whether in fact it is now going to read neatly from what it has been reading. So, and as I said, for me, finally, the safeguard is that the people are the ones who would be the ones to decide. Yes.
Which is, well, what the Constitution says that the power is with the people. Midamo, your closing comments as we wind up.
You see, Mike, William Kasait Kamket is not a Jubilee member of Parliament. First. Two, he's a Kano member of Parliament.
Yes, and what does that have to do with anything?
Myself, I'm a member of the Jubilee Party, and I think my party has not given a stand on this. What we have from William that is
Aden Duale and denied it.
That is it. Aden Duale had to deny it. Because
does it matter if it comes from Kano, from NASA, from whoever, as long as it's a bill that would help Kenya?
That is important. Because what we have from William Kasait Kamket is this guy is only interested in making some national news. From Jubilee Party, we are not impressed.
Away from whether he's Jubilee, Kanu, or whatever, what do you think of the bill yourself?
The bill itself is populist. It is going nowhere. Read it properly. It is a populist bill that will not be voted by any member of parliament in that house. You have seen NASA MPs have disowned it. Jubilee has disowned it. Even his leader himself, Gideon Moi, will not okay that particular bill. Because reading through the articles, the sections.
What is wrong with the bill?
The bill itself seeks to disenfranchise a Kenyan voter, that a Kenyan voter cannot elect her or his president, but the president will be voted in parliament. That can never happen in this country.
Although it's a president, according to him, with very little power. Okay, I've got your thoughts on that. Javas, and also keep it tight so that
Mike,
we wind
I'll
up.
be very specific on the issues. One, as we look to save money, we must also look to save our democracy. Now, when you score through that bill, you realize a number, yes, of important provisions or proposals, but two, a number of not well-meaning proposals in the face or through the lenses of democracy. One, if you look at how our county assemblies are constituted today and how people vote for members of county assemblies, and then you look through that proposals, you realize that one of the major proposals is that the county assemblies from various respective counties should vote for the senators. Then the questions, one, of accountability, two, of the place of the people in determining their leaders arises. If at all it's the county assemblies that will vote for senators, a male and a female, to represent the county at the national level, to whom will those senators be accountable? To the county assembly or to the people? If it is actually a member of, members of the parliament who are to determine who becomes this powerful prime minister, to whom will the prime minister be beholden? To the assembly or to the people? Questions of accountability. If it is the president who is not actually determined by the people, then the sovereign will and power of the people, where does it rest? So, if it's a question of just enriching the political power of the county assemblies and then the parliament, then actually it beats logic of what kind of democracy we want to have.
Right.
So looking at it through that kind of prism, then you realize, well, there is the well-meaning, and for which I think Honorable Kamtet deserves a bit of superlative encomiums, for having sat down to draft such a bill to see how our democracy can be transformed for the better. It is important for us to ask ourselves, if we deny a person their power to determine a leader whom he or she can hold accountable, then we are removing power from the people and putting it on the shoulders of other persons. That there is a challenge. When you look at, for example, the United States of America, it's not a must that we compare ourselves to them. A question of inclusivity, yes, arises, but it's not a must that every person and every community must hold certain executive power, if you ask me. We've not heard, for example, that whether it is the blacks have certain office that they hold, or they have been included in certain office, etc. And there are more than 300 million people in the US, for example. We've not seen that whether it's the people of the Spanish or maybe Mexican origin or descent do not have such kind of office that they hold as representatives, even though there are many in the country. Look, let us be careful. Yes, we know very well that questions of social justice are very important for us, looking at historical challenges that we face in this country. Yes, questions of inclusivity in governance are very important, but we need to be careful about how we want to expand executive office or whatever kind of offices we have, merely for the sake of assuaging or appeasing political egos.
Yeah, political interests. I'll have to cut you short because of time. We're really out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Just to review the news that has made headlines this week. Thank you very much. And well, at this point, we're going to take a short break. And right here on Morning Express, it's still, well, we're still on. And we've got entertainment news coming up right after the break. So do stay with us.